We've got some wild rumors to get to on today's show, but first, we're so close to 12,000 subs. If you haven't already, please click that sub button, because when we reach 12K, we're going to do 12 shots on camera for the people. So make sure to subscribe for the best Broncos YouTube coverage out there. What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. I am your host, Matthew Peterson, and on today's show, we're going to talk about Russell Wilson and the changes we can expect to see with Sean Payton at the helm, including, and not just, no more private QB coaches allowed in the facility, but maybe you don't get a cakewalk of a QB battle, because there really shouldn't be one when you're Russell Wilson, with having Brett Rypien as your backup. Maybe we can expect a more lively competition between Russ and the backup for the starting job. So all this coming from Super Bowl 57's Radio Row, where there's Fox media personalities there and former players, and everyone's a who's who of the NFL. And there's lots of questions circulating around Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. So let's start with this. Coming in from Dov, who tweeted out a report. New Broncos coach Sean Payton took the Denver job in spite of Russell Wilson, according to Tom Rock at Newsday, who spoke directly with Payton's Fox teammate Terry Bradshaw. Terry also said that Payton didn't want the Cardinals job because of Kyler Murray. So like I said, you got a whole bunch of Fox media personalities there. I still don't understand why Terry Bradshaw's on TV. And he's a bit senile at this point, but they were asking him about Sean Payton and, hey, do you think he's going to be successful in Denver? Will he be a good coach? And here's what Bradshaw said, and it didn't really make a ton of sense in English, but here it is, word for word. He's going to be a successful coach because he's going to get that team and he's going to create that makeup, and that doesn't mean it's going to be with the people that are there. So, pretty much in layman's terms, what Terry Bradshaw is saying here is Sean Payton's not tied to Russell Wilson. And that's not really all that new information. I said before any hiring was made, I am sure ownership is reassuring candidates of, hey, we know Russ didn't go over well last year. We're not going to fire you after one season like Hackett if Russ doesn't perform all that well. Don't worry too much about that. But it might feel like Sean Payton is kind of just looking past Russell Wilson a little bit and going, hey, I know how long I'm tied to him for. 1-2 seasons max. I can move on pretty quickly if I need to. And I think I might start this year planting some seeds of, you know what, Russ? You've got to kick it up a notch. Because I know the last head coach was way too scared to ever even think about pulling the cord on you, but I'm not. So I might bring in some real backup quarterback competition, okay? Because let's be honest, Brett Rypien, nice guy, cool nickname, Grippin' and Rip It, not a backup quarterback in the NFL, right? He had some decent games-ish, some decent throws against the Jets, but I don't think going into 2023, the plan is for Brett Rypien to be the backup quarterback. Right, Brett Rypien is a backup quarterback when you have 100% certainty that Russell Wilson or whoever your quarterback is the guy. I don't think people feel that confident about Russell Wilson anymore. So for that reason, I think we might see some backup QB options get entertained. So enter George Paton now, because he's going to have a tall order with Sean Payton this offseason of finding a certain level of a backup quarterback, because you don't want to break the bank for a backup QB when you've got Russell Wilson, because you'd have the highest paid quarterback in the NFL by a mile, quarterback room in the NFL by a mile, right? You don't want to be paying $250 million to your starter and pay a lot to a backup, right? So you got to find that nice medium, that nice balance of a backup QB. So there is an interesting little tidbit I want to share with you guys now. Our folks here at Chat Sports who cover the Chiefs and the Eagles, Chase Sr. and Harrison Graham, are in Phoenix right now for the Super Bowl, and they had the opportunity to talk to Michael Vick about what he thinks the Broncos should do at their backup position with Sean Payton. So let's roll the clip right now with Michael Vick talking about that certain, conversation that's going to take place between Payton and, Sean Payton and George Paton about the backup position in Denver.
One, Coach Payton is an amazing man. I love our time with Fox this year and spending time with Sean. I can listen to him talk all day. He drops gems and he understands the game. And I think Russell should be so thankful that he has Sean Payton coming because it's going to change the landscape of how he played. Now, I do expect Coach Payton to bring in some competition and push him a little bit. And that's just me talking. I haven't talked to Coach about that, but I can see that happening. And Coach just understands offense, and he knows the game in and out, and he's an incredible football mind.
Okay, so with that being said from Vic, let's start entertaining backup QB options via the draft and free agency, because I think Denver's going to make some sort of move in one of those spots right there. Now, first things first, though, today's show, we're going to get to in just a second, is sponsored by Fume. So I want to tell everyone about the awesome benefits we've got going on at Fume, because we all have bad habits. We know how difficult it can be to kick those bad habits. Now, our sponsor, Fume, is on a mission to accelerate humanity's breakup from the bad habits that consume far too many of us. Fume is a natural diffusive device that uses plants and behavioral science to help you trade out your negative habit for a positive one. I personally didn't expect much out of Fume when I got it, but the minty sensation, it's powerful. Don't get me wrong here. They've also got this awesome journey pack we can show you guys that has some unique flavors to it that you probably don't see from your average product here. So we'll throw them on screen for you because we got the white cranberry, the maple pepper, and the crisp mint. And as you can see, it's a pretty small, lightweight device. It fits in your hand nicely. It's not too big. It's not too small. That's what she said. So make sure you get started with Fume today. It's not a vape. It's a non-electronic device that helps transform your negative habits into a positive one. So get started today when you go to www.tryfume.com/chatsports. That's tryfume.com/chatsports. tryfum.com/chatsports. That link, by the way, is in the comments and the description of today's show with the promo code CHATSPORTS. Okay, so now let's talk free agent quarterbacks here. So there's not a lot of great options out there. There's Baker Mayfield, there's Jacoby Brissett, Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater, and Sam Darnold. 5 QBs I identified as potential backup QBs that could really bring in some legit competition and not a Josh Johnson, Brett Rippon-esque competition like last year. Now, Teddy Bridgewater, of course, a bit of a notable name. Broncos quarterback a season ago. He had a down year with the Dolphins. He got some opportunities to fit in there or to fill in there. Ultimately, I think they like Skylar Thompson, their 7th-round pick out of Kansas State, more than Teddy Bridgewater. But when he was with the Broncos back in 2021, I think we can look back at it now and go, we are probably a bit too harsh on him, knowing how bad it could get on the offensive side a year later. 3,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I'm not opposed to bringing back Teddy. I don't know if he wants to come back necessarily. Didn't feel like they left all things on the greatest of terms at the end. Now, there is Sam Darnold, and Darnold is a tough one to crack because I was sold on my initial take of he sucks, he looks bad, he plays bad. If it sounds like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. But he kind of played well at the end of the season for Carolina. So those are 2 options I think Denver could look into. I think they're going to make some sizable move for backup quarterback. I don't think it's going to be some UDFA that we never heard of before and just hand him the job because it doesn't matter because you have Russell Wilson. No, I think there's going to be a bit of a name at backup QB, and Sean Payton at least is going to get a bit shorter for Russell Wilson. Now, speaking of Teddy Bridgewater, would you welcome Teddy Bridgewater back to Denver, right? Would you like to see him come back as a backup quarterback for the Broncos? Let me know with yes or no in the comments section below. Now, let's switch gears here, and let's talk draft picks, because Denver only has 6 picks in the draft after making that trade for Sean Payton, and they have to make all 6 of these picks count. So they can't afford, in my opinion, to use a top pick on a quarterback, which a top pick is 67th overall, so it's not that high, on a QB unless they really fall in love with him, because that's definitely not going to help with winning right now. So with that being said, I also want to show Russell Wilson's dead cap hit over the rest of his contract, because you can see Denver is tied to him for 2023. That is without a question, okay? $107 million. the next year drops down to 85. Would still be a NFL record of number of an NFL record of a dead cap hit, really doubling what Matt Ryan owes, or the Falcons owe Matt Ryan. So probably tied to him through 2023 and 2024. 2025 you could get out of most likely here. So let's look at some potential draft targets with that being said. I'm only looking at guys in rounds 2 or days 2 and 3 because they're not getting anyone who could go round 1. They're just way too far back. So Tanner McKee out of Stanford, he's going to be getting some buzz as we get closer to the combine. I'm a big fan of Hendon Hooker. Now he's coming off an ACL injury, which might be a blessing in disguise, at least for the Broncos, because that could have him slide a little bit, and he could fall to Denver at 67 or 68. Aidan O'Connell and Jaren Hall and Jake Haener, I think are probably going to go a bit later in the draft. So I think Denver, if they decide, you know what, let's try and get some impact players with our 2 third-round picks that could come in and really start day 1 on the offensive line or maybe an extra corner or something like that, well, then maybe they decide to address the QB spot in day 3 of the draft. So let's compare 2 guys here, Hendon Hooker and Jaren Hall. Hooker would be more of a round 2 or round 3 type of quarterback. Jaren Hall is interesting. He's going to have that Zach Wilson type pro day where everyone sees his athleticism and his cannon of an arm, and it might shoot him up the draft board. But there's a reason why you haven't heard of Jaren Hall most likely until the draft, because he wasn't really setting the world on fire in Provo this year. 31 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That's great. Don't get me wrong. I still would rather have Hendon Hooker, no doubt about it. He's just a much more smarter quarterback, and his downfield accuracy is great too. Someone called Hall like a mini Patrick Mahomes. That's just childish. You cannot make that comparison. Patrick Mahomes is a generational talent. But Hall could be an interesting development pick, whereas Hooker, he's likely going to miss most of next year with that ACL injury, so he could somewhat redshirt behind Russell Wilson and maybe take over the following year if Denver decides to go a different way after 2023. So you decide, should the Broncos draft a quarterback? Draft or pass? Let me know in the comments section below what you think Denver should ultimately do, because if they do pick a quarterback, they've only got 6 picks. That's one of their 6 picks going to someone who likely won't see much playing time unless things really get out of control for Russell Wilson. So that's not going to help all that much with trying to win now with Russ if you're using some of your very limited assets to replace Russ down the road. At the end of the day, I think you should draft a quarterback no matter what. One, I just think the quarterback position is so tough to come around, right? It's a crapshoot. It really is. So for that reason, I'm all for every single draft throwing some dart, right, and hoping you hit the bullseye. Unless you have a Mahomes or a Brady or a Josh Allen where you are really, really absolutely no doubt about it sure, then why not? You know, because you could find a diamond in the rough, a hidden gem in day 3 of the draft, kind of like Russell Wilson going to Seattle. They had Matt Flynn. People criticized the pick of Russell Wilson at the time because they go, why are you drafting Russell Wilson? You just signed Matt Flynn. He's a great backup from Green Bay. That's why. The same reason why Washington drafted RG3 and Kirk Cousins in the same draft class. Despite moving up for Robert Griffin III, saw something in Kirk Cousins. They thought, you know what? That position is just so valuable and so critical to success, it's worth a day 3 flyer compared to going offensive tackle for a guy who might not even make the roster. So I'm all for drafting a quarterback at some point. The question is, do you want to use your first pick in the draft on one, or you want to wait till round 6 or 7 and probably won't have a huge success rate at it, but hey, it's worth a flyer on it. I appreciate everyone who tuned in, made us a part of your day. We'll sign off and see you all later with more Broncos news and rumors.